Marcus Thompson's prosthetic leg clicked softly against the gym floor as two identical men in designer suits watched him clean the heavy bags. The billionaire Hartley twins had just asked him to step into the ring with them. His military instincts screamed danger, but the stack of overdue bills in his truck and his daughter's empty lunch account made him pause. What he didn't know was that this moment would expose a 20-year-old secret that would change everything. Before we dive into the story, make sure to smash subscribe, because tomorrow we have an extra special story for you that will blow your mind. The early morning light filtered through the grimy windows of Warriors Rest Boxing Gym, casting long shadows across the worn canvas ring. Marcus wiped down the leather with practiced strokes, his movements efficient despite the slight hitch in his gait. The prosthetic below his left knee had become part of him over the past 3 years, a constant reminder of the IED that ended his military career outside Kandahar. "Daddy said you were the best fighter in the whole army," a small voice piped up from the corner. 7-year-old Jasmine sat cross-legged on a pile of gym mats, her school backpack beside her, pencil moving across homework pages in the dawn light. Marcus smiled without turning. "Your daddy talks too much, baby girl." The gym wouldn't open for another hour, but Marcus always arrived early. It was the only way he could bring Jasmine along before school while earning the extra cash that kept them barely afloat. Between his disability check and the minimum wage the gym owner paid him to clean and maintain equipment, they scraped by. Barely. The front door chimed, unusual for this hour. Marcus looked up to see two men enter, moving with the synchronized precision of people who'd shared a womb and never quite separated. The Hartley twins. Everyone in the city knew their faces from billboards and business magazines. Tech moguls who'd built their empire on algorithms and innovation, they were as famous for their wealth as for their uncanny similarity. Daniel and David Hartley stood at the entrance, their tailored suits looking absurdly out of place among the hanging bags and the smell of old sweat. They were 35, Marcus guessed, with sharp cheekbones and eyes that seemed to catalog everything in seconds. But there was something else in their expression as they looked at him. Recognition? No, that couldn't be right. Men like them didn't know men like him. "We're looking for Marcus Thompson," Daniel said. Or was it David? Even their voices matched. Marcus set down his cleaning rag slowly. "That's me. Gym doesn't open until 7. "We're not here for the regular hours," David said. "We have a proposition." Jasmine had gone very still in the corner, the way she did when strangers appeared. It was a habit she'd developed since her mother died, a kind of watchful wariness that broke Marcus's heart every time he saw it. "We want a spar," Daniel continued. "With you specifically." Marcus almost laughed. These soft-handed billionaires wanted to step into the ring with him? He'd been Golden Gloves before his deployment, trained fighters in the army, and even with one leg, he could probably drop them both without breaking a sweat. "I don't train civilly," he started. $20,000, David interrupted. "For one morning, 3 rounds each." The number hung in the air like a physical thing. Marcus felt his throat tighten. 20,000 would clear his debts, pay for Jasmine's after-school program for the whole year. Maybe even let him fix the truck that wheezed and coughed every morning. "Why?" The question came out rougher than he intended. The twins exchanged a look, one of those silent communications that only identical siblings could manage. "Let's say we need to prepare for something," Daniel said carefully, "and we heard you were the best." "Used to be," Marcus said, gesturing vaguely at his prosthetic. "That was before this." "We know about your injury," David said. "We also know you still train fighters here, that you've adapted your style. That's exactly what we need." Jasmine made a small sound from the corner. Marcus glanced at her, saw the way she clutched her pencil. She was old enough to understand what $20,000 meant, old enough to know how many nights he'd sat at the kitchen table with bills spread out like a map of defeat. "Just sparring?" Marcus asked. "Just sparring," Daniel confirmed. "We'll sign waivers. Any injuries are on us." Marcus's instincts prickled. Something about this felt off. Rich men didn't just walk into rundown gyms offering small fortunes for sparring sessions. But then he thought about the notice from Jasmine's school about the field trip fee. The look on her face when he'd told her maybe next time. The way she'd said it was okay, She understood, in that two-adult voice that 7-year-olds shouldn't have. "Gear up," he said finally. "Rules are simple. 3 rounds, 3 minutes each. Standard boxing rules. You want to stop? You say stop." The twins smiled in unison, and for a moment, Marcus felt like prey that had just agreed to walk into a trap. But $20,000 was $20,000. As they headed to the locker room to change, David turned back. "Your daughter can stay. We don't mind an audience." The fact that they knew about Jasmine sent another chill down Marcus's spine, but he pushed it aside. Rich people did their research. That's how they stayed rich. He walked over to Jasmine, knelt beside her despite the protest from his prosthetic. "You okay, baby girl?" She nodded, but her brown eyes were worried. "Are those men going to hurt you?" "No, baby. Daddy's going to be fine. Just some exercise, like when I train the other fighters." "They look at you funny," she whispered. Marcus had noticed it too, the way the twins studied him like he was a puzzle they were trying to solve. But he kissed Jasmine's forehead and stood. "Just do your homework. I'll be done soon." What happens next will turn this morning upside down, reveal a truth nobody expected, and remind us why sometimes the quietest voices carry the most power. Stay tuned to see what happens next. If you're enjoying the story, please like, share, and subscribe for more. Marcus had wrapped his hands thousands of times, but this morning the familiar ritual felt different. Each loop of tape seemed to whisper warnings. In the mirror, he caught sight of the twins emerging from the locker room. They wore designer workout gear that probably cost more than his monthly rent. But what struck him was how they moved, not like wealthy amateurs playing at boxing, but with an economy of motion that spoke of training. "You've done this before," Marcus said as they approached the ring. Daniel smiled, pulling on his gloves. "We've had lessons." "Lessons," Marcus repeated. The word felt inadequate for the way David was bouncing on his toes, testing his footwork with practiced ease. They climbed through the ropes, and Marcus noticed how they automatically took positions that maximized their angles, how their hands came up to guard without thought. Whatever lessons they'd had, they'd been serious ones. "Who goes first?" Marcus asked. "I will," Daniel said, stepping forward. "David likes to watch, analyze patterns." Marcus nodded, falling into his instructor rhythm. 3 minutes. We go easy first round. See how you move. This isn't about... Daniel's jab cut him off. It was fast, precise, slipping past Marcus's raised guard to tap his headgear. Not hard, but enough to make a point. Marcus stepped back, reassessing. "Sorry," Daniel said, not looking sorry at all. Reflexes. Marcus circled left, his prosthetic making tiny adjustments with each step. The technology was good, military grade, but it still wasn't flesh and bone. He'd learned to compensate, to shift his weight differently, to turn his disability into an unexpected angle of attack. They exchanged tentative combinations for the first minute. Daniel had skill, no doubt about it. His punches were technically sound, his defense solid, but there was something else. A hesitation in his attacks, like he was holding back. Not from lack of ability, but from something deeper. Marcus pressed forward with a combination he'd perfected in Afghanistan. A series of shots designed to overwhelm an opponent's defense. Daniel slipped the first 2 punches with surprising grace, but walked into the third, a left hook that caught him clean on the jaw. The billionaire staggered, and for a split second, his mask slipped. The polished businessman vanished, replaced by something raw and familiar. Marcus had seen that look before, in mirrors and in the faces of other soldiers. It was the look of someone who'd been hit by life harder than any punch could manage. "You're good," Daniel said, recovering his composure. "Different than I expected." "How's that?" "You don't fight angry." The observation caught Marcus off guard. Most people assumed veterans, especially wounded ones, carried rage like a weapon. But Marcus had left his anger in the Afghan dust, along with his leg and too many friends. What remained was something quieter, more dangerous: purpose. The timer rang. Daniel touched gloves with him, a sign of respect, then climbed out to let his brother take his place. David was different. Where Daniel had been technical, David was intuitive. He moved like water, flowing around Marcus's attacks, counterpunching with timing that spoke of natural talent honed by practice. But like his brother, He seemed to be searching for something in the exchange, testing not just Marcus's skills, but something deeper. Midway through the round, David spoke. "You trained Sergeant Williams." It wasn't a question. Marcus nearly dropped his guard in surprise. Williams had been in his unit, a kid from Detroit who'd used boxing to escape the streets, only to find himself in a different kind of war. "How do you know Williams?" "We funded his gym when he got back," David said, ducking under a cross. "He told us about you, said you saved his life." "Williams talked too much," Marcus grunted, throwing another combination. "He said you pulled him out of a burning Humvee, said you went back 3 times, even after—" David's eyes flicked to Marcus's prosthetic. Ancient history, but David pressed on. "He said you taught him something in the hospital afterward, about fighting without anger, about purpose." Marcus felt Jasmine watching from the corner, saw her little face tight with concentration. She'd never heard these stories. He'd kept his service locked away, not wanting to burden her with the weight of what he'd seen, what he'd done, what he'd lost. The timer rang again. David had barely broken a sweat, but his eyes were intense as they touched gloves. The twins conferred in low voices, that silent communication flowing between them. Then they both climbed back into the ring. "Both of us this time," Daniel said, "if you're willing." 2-on-1 wasn't fair, especially with his prosthetic. But something in their faces, that searching quality, made him nod. They needed this, whatever this was. The final round was a revelation. The twins moved in perfect synchronization, covering each other's openings, attacking in coordinated waves. But Marcus had faced worse odds in darker places. He adapted, using their coordination against them, baiting one to create openings in the other. At one point, he caught David with an uppercut that sat him down hard. Daniel immediately rushed to his brother's side, and in that moment, Marcus saw it clearly. The desperation in Daniel's eyes, the way his hands shook as he checked his brother's condition. These weren't just rich men playing at combat. They were men preparing for something that terrified them. David waved off his brother's concern and stood. "We need to tell him." "Not yet," Daniel hissed. "Look at him," David said louder. "Really look at him." Both twins turned to Marcus then, and the intensity of their stares made him step back. They were seeing something, recognizing something, and Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with sweat cooling on his skin. The timer rang, ending the round and the session, but nobody moved. The 3 men stood in the ring, breathing hard, while Jasmine watched with wide eyes from her corner. Finally, Daniel spoke. "There's something we need to tell you, about why we're really here." Marcus pulled off his gloves slowly. "I'm listening." The twins exchanged another look. Then David reached into his gym bag and pulled out a photograph, old and creased. He handed it to Marcus with hands that trembled slightly. The photo showed a young black woman in army dress uniform, smiling at the camera with a brightness that seemed to light up the worn paper. Marcus's world tilted. He knew that smile, saw it every day in his daughter's face. "Her name was Angela Thompson," Daniel said quietly. "She saved our lives in Iraq in 2003. She died doing it." Marcus's legs nearly gave out. He gripped the ropes, the photo crumpling in his fist. Angela, his sister, his little sister, who'd joined up a year after him, who'd wanted to serve, to matter, to make a difference. "You're lying." The words came out as a whisper. David shook his head. "We were contractors, young and stupid. Thought we could help rebuild with our tech skills. Got caught in an ambush outside Mosul. Our convoy was hit. Everyone was dead or dying. Then this soldier appeared, pulled us out one by one. She went back for our interpreter even though—" His voice broke, "even though the fuel tank was already burning." Daniel finished. "She got him out, got us all out, but the explosion. She covered us with her body when it blew." Marcus sank to his knees, the prosthetic awkward beneath him. All these years, the army had told him Angela died in an ambush. Hero's death, they'd said. Medal of Honor, posthumous. But they'd never given him details, never told him who she'd saved. "We've been looking for her family for 20 years, David continued. "The army wouldn't release information. We hired investigators, worked every angle. Then 6 months ago, Williams mentioned you. Thompson from Detroit. Golden gloves. Sister who died in Iraq. We had to know. Jasmine had crept closer, drawn by her father's distress. She pressed against his side, small hands clutching his arm. Daddy? Marcus pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. His sister's niece? The daughter Angela never got to meet. Why now? He managed to ask. Why find me now? The twins knelt too, bringing themselves to his level. Because we built our empire on a promise? Daniel said. Angela made us promise, in those last moments, to make our lives matter, to use whatever skills we had to help people. Every patent, every innovation, every dollar we've made, it all started with her sacrifice. And because, David added softly, we found out 6 months ago that we're dying. The words hung in the air. Marcus looked at them, really looked, saw now what he'd missed before, the slight gauntness beneath expensive clothes, the careful way they moved when they thought no one was watching. Both of you? Genetic condition, Daniel said. Runs in families, particularly in twins. We have maybe a year, probably less. Before we go, David continued, we needed to find her family, to fulfill the rest of our promise. Daniel pulled out a manila envelope thick with documents. We've set up a trust for her family, for you and Jasmine. It's substantial. Marcus couldn't process the words. His mind was stuck on Angela, 19 years old, pulling strangers from burning vehicles. That was so like her, always running toward danger to help others. She talked about you, Daniel said suddenly, in those last moments. Said her brother was the real hero. Said you taught her everything about courage. The tears came then, 20 years of grief breaking through walls Marcus had built brick by brick. Jasmine hugged him tighter, her own eyes wet, though she didn't fully understand why. Is it about Aunt Angela? She asked softly. Marcus had told her stories, shown her pictures, kept his sister's memory alive in small ways. Marcus nodded, unable to speak. The twins waited, patient, their own eyes glistening. In the morning light, with the gym dust dancing around them, 4 broken people sat in a boxing ring, connected by a ghost who'd saved them all in different ways. Finally, Marcus found his voice. Tell me about her last day. Tell me everything. And they did. Every detail they could remember. How she joked with them about their terrible Arabic. How she'd shared pictures of her family. How she'd sung Motown songs to keep their spirits up during the long convoy ride. How even in those final moments, she'd been thinking of others. She made us promise to live, David said. Really live, not just exist. And we have, Daniel added. But it never felt like enough. Not until now. Marcus stood slowly, helping Jasmine to her feet. The envelope Daniel had given him felt impossibly heavy, but heavier still was the knowledge that his sister's sacrifice had echoed through decades, creating ripples he'd never imagined. I don't want your money, he said finally. The twins looked stricken. But I want to know why you really needed to spar. They exchanged glances. We told you, we're dying. No, Marcus said. There's more. You don't learn to fight like that just to find someone's family. David smiled sadly. You really are her brother. He sighed. There are people who want to take what we've built. Corporate raiders who smell blood in the water. We've been training to defend ourselves, but also to understand warriors, Daniel finished. To understand what made Angela who she was. What makes people like you who you are. Marcus looked at them for a long moment. Then he made a decision that would have made Angela proud. Come back tomorrow, he said. Same time. We'll train properly. We can't ask. You're not asking. I'm offering. My sister saved your lives so you could build something. I'm going to make sure you keep it long enough to matter. The twins stood, hope flickering in their eyes. As they gathered their gear, Jasmine tugged on Marcus's hand. Are they our family now? She asked in that direct way children had. Marcus looked at the brothers who'd carried his sister's memory for 2 decades, who'd built an empire on a dying soldier's wish. Yeah, baby girl, I think maybe they are. As the twins headed for the door, David turned back. She would have been proud of you. The way you've raised Jasmine, the men you've trained, the life you've built despite everything. Marcus nodded. throat too tight for words. After they left, he sat in the empty ring with Jasmine, holding the photo of Angela, his baby sister, barely out of her teens, smiling in her dress uniform. She was pretty, Jasmine said softly. She was beautiful, Marcus agreed. Inside and out, just like you. They sat there as the morning sun climbed higher, filling the gym with golden light. Marcus had woken thinking this was just another day of scraping by. Instead, he'd found pieces of his sister he'd never known existed, a purpose he hadn't expected, and a strange new family forged in fire and loss. The envelope lay beside him, unopened. Whatever was inside could wait. For now, he just held his daughter and remembered his sister, the hero who'd saved lives and changed futures with her last breath. The weeks that followed blurred together in a rhythm of sweat and revelation. Every morning at 5, the Hartley twins arrived at the gym. They traded their suits for workout gear, their corporate meetings for pre-dawn sessions that left them gasping on the canvas. Marcus pushed them hard, not out of cruelty but necessity. Whatever corporate sharks were circling, they'd need more than boardroom tactics to survive. But the real education went both ways. As Daniel worked the heavy bag, he'd talk about the company they'd built. How every innovation traced back to Angela's words, "Make it matter." They'd created technology that brought clean water to remote villages, medical devices that saved lives in field hospitals, communication systems that connected the isolated. "We could have made more money in defense contracts," David said one morning, blood dripping from his wrapped knuckles. But that felt like betraying her memory. Marcus adjusted David's stance. "She would have understood. War pays well. She died in one. We couldn't profit from that." Jasmine had become their unofficial timekeeper, calling out rounds while finishing her homework. The twins brought her books, educational tablets loaded with programs, little gifts that Marcus initially resisted until Daniel explained. "She reminds us why we're doing this," he said. "All of it. The company, the foundation, the fighting. It's for the next generation." The truth about their condition emerged in pieces. The genetic disorder was ravaging them slowly, attacking their nervous systems in subtle ways. Some days, Daniel's hands shook so badly he couldn't wrap them. Other mornings, David's balance was off, making him stumble through footwork drills. They hit it well, but Marcus saw everything. It was getting worse. "How long do you really have?" Marcus asked one morning after a particularly brutal session. The twins sat on the ring apron, exhausted. "Doctors say 6 months, Daniel admitted. "Maybe 8 if we're lucky. And these corporate raiders know? They know enough," David said bitterly. Vultures always smell death. Marcus learned their names. Richardson Industries, led by a man named Gregory Richardson, who'd built his fortune on hostile takeovers. He wanted the Hartley twins' patents, their revolutionary clean energy technology, their medical innovations. More than that, he wanted to weaponize them, sell them to the highest bidder regardless of consequence. "We've been fighting him in court," Daniel explained. "But he's moving to more direct methods. Intimidation, threats. We've had security breaches at our homes. Why not just sell? Take the money and enjoy what time you have left?" The twins looked at him like he'd suggested burning Angela's photo. "Because we promised," they said in unison. The corporate battle was beyond Marcus's expertise, but he understood warfare. He helped them hire real security, veterans he'd trained who needed work. He taught the twins not just to fight, but to think tactically, to see threats before they materialized. But the real change was in Jasmine. She'd always been quiet since her mother's death, carrying a sadness too heavy for her small shoulders. The twins drew her out, asking about school, teaching her coding on their tablets, showing her how the technology they built could change lives. "I want to help people like Aunt Angela did," she announced one morning. David knelt beside her, his hands steady for once. "She already did, through your dad, and through you. Every good thing ripples outward." The moment that changed everything came 6 weeks into their training. Marcus arrived to find the gym's front windows smashed, glass scattered across the floor like deadly stars. The twins stood in the debris, faces grim. "Richardson's escalating," Daniel said. On the mirror, someone had spray painted a message, "Sell or join your sister." Marcus felt the old rage stir, the fury he'd buried in Afghan soil. But then he saw Jasmine, frozen in the doorway, her face pale with terror. He pushed the anger down, locked it away. His daughter needed him steady, not savage. "Pack your things," he told the twins. "You're moving in with us." They protested, but Marcus cut them off. "This isn't charity, it's strategy. Harder to hit multiple targets if they're in one location." Their small apartment became a strange fortress. The twins slept on the couch and floor, their billion-dollar lives compressed into Marcus's modest space. But something beautiful happened in that closeness. They became the family none of them had expected. Daniel helped Jasmine with her math homework, while David cooked meals with whatever was in the fridge, joking that poverty improved his culinary creativity. They told stories about their childhood, about building their first computer from scraps, about the teacher who'd believed in them when no one else had, like Angela believed in us. David said one night over spaghetti, "One person's faith can change everything." Marcus watched his daughter bloom in their presence. She laughed more, spoke up in class, even started teaching other kids the coding basics the twins had shown her. The sadness that had clung to her was lifting, replaced by purpose. But Richardson wasn't finished. The attacks grew bolder, slashed tires, dead animals left at the gym. One of Marcus's veteran security friends was hospitalized after a suspicious accident. The message was clear: surrender or suffer. "Maybe we should sell," Daniel said one night, his whole body trembling from the disease's progression, "before anyone else gets hurt." Would Angela have quit? Marcus asked. The answer hung unspoken in the air. The end came faster than expected. Marcus woke one morning to find David collapsed in the bathroom, blood frothing from his mouth. The seizure had been violent, leaving him barely conscious. As the ambulance arrived, Daniel gripped Marcus's arm with surprising strength. "If something happens to us, it all goes to you and Jasmine. Everything. The company, the foundation, all of it." "Nothing's happening to you," Marcus lied. At the hospital, the truth was undeniable. David's organs were failing. The disease had accelerated, perhaps triggered by stress, by the constant threats, by the physical training. He had days at most. Daniel wasn't far behind. The twins, who'd done everything together, would leave the world the same way. "We need to tell them about Richardson," David whispered from his hospital bed, "about what he really wants." The truth was worse than corporate greed. Richardson had partnered with foreign interests who wanted the Hartley technology for military purposes. Their clean energy innovations could be weaponized. Their medical devices could be reversed, turned from healing to harm. Everything Angela had inspired would be corrupted. "We have fail-safes," Daniel explained weakly. "If anything happens to us, the patents, fragment, become public domain. Richardson gets nothing. Then why is he pushing so hard? Because there's a loophole. If we sell voluntarily, the protection's void. He needs us to break." Marcus understood now. This wasn't just about money or power. It was about legacy, about honoring the sacrifice that started it all. He made a decision. "I need you to hold on for 3 more days," he said. "Can you do that?" The twins nodded weakly. "Why 3 days?" "Because that's when Richardson's going to learn what happens when you threaten a soldier's family." Marcus didn't plan violence. Angela wouldn't have wanted that. Instead, he did what soldiers do best. He gathered intelligence and allies. The veterans he'd trained formed a network, each with their own skills. Electronic warfare specialists, investigators, men and women who'd traded uniforms for civilian clothes but never lost their edge. They dug into Richardson's life and found the predictable rot, embezzlement, bribery, connections to foreign agents that skirted treason. But more than that, they found his weakness: public image. Richardson styled himself a patriotic businessman, a job creator, a pillar of society. The truth would destroy him. 3 days later, as promised, everything came together. Marcus had called a press conference at the hospital, ostensibly for the twins to announce their succession plan. Richardson arrived with lawyers and bodyguards, confident he could pressure dying men into submission. He didn't expect the room to be full of veterans. each wearing dress uniforms, medals gleaming under the harsh hospital lights. He didn't expect the massive screens showing his encrypted communications with foreign agents. He didn't expect Jasmine, standing small but fierce, reading a letter her Aunt Angela had written to her mother before deploying. "I go to serve," Jasmine read, her voice clear and strong. "Not for glory or medals, but so children like my future niece or nephew can grow up free, so they can build things that matter, so they can choose their own destiny." The room was silent. Then Marcus spoke, his voice carrying the authority of every battlefield he'd walked. 20 years ago, my sister died saving these men. She believed their lives had value, that they'd do something worth her sacrifice. And they have. They've saved more lives than she ever could have imagined. They've built her dream into reality. He looked directly at Richardson. "You want to destroy that dream for profit. You want to weaponize technology meant to heal. You threatened a child to get it." His voice hardened. "That ends now." The screens changed, showing Richardson's crimes in detail. Financial fraud, conspiracy, attempted extortion. His lawyers were already backing away, distancing themselves from a sinking ship. "The FBI is waiting outside," Marcus continued calmly. "You can walk out with them, or my friends here can escort you. Your choice." Richardson's face had gone pale. He looked around the room, seeing no allies, no escape. The veterans stood like a wall, men and women who'd faced worse than him and survived. He chose wisely, walking out to meet federal agents with what dignity remained. The room erupted in quiet celebration, but Marcus moved to the twins' bedsides. They were fading, but smiling. "Angela would be proud," David whispered. "She'd kick our asses for taking so long," Daniel corrected weakly. They died that night, within minutes of each other, hands clasped across the space between their beds. They'd fulfilled their promise, protected their legacy, honored a fallen soldier's wish. Marcus held vigil with Jasmine until the end. The funeral was massive. Tech leaders, humanitarians, and hundreds of people whose lives had been touched by Hartley innovations. But the front row was reserved for veterans, men and women who understood sacrifice, who knew that sometimes the greatest battles were fought in boardrooms and hospital wards. Marcus spoke simply. "They say no one is irreplaceable, but they're wrong. Angela was irreplaceable. Her sacrifice created ripples that touched millions. Daniel and David were irreplaceable. They turned tragedy into triumph, loss into purpose." He looked at Jasmine, standing tall beside him. "But the ripples don't stop. They spread. They grow. They inspire new waves." 6 months later, Marcus stood in a different building. The Hartley Thompson Foundation, dedicated to veterans' education and innovative technology for humanitarian purposes. Jasmine's coding club met there after school. Veterans found job, training, and purpose. The clean water technology reached villages that had never known plenty. Richardson was in federal prison, his empire dismantled. The patents were protected, the innovations safe from those who would corrupt them. Angela's dream lived on, stronger than ever. But the real victory was smaller, quieter. It was Jasmine teaching a younger girl to code, explaining patiently how technology could help people. It was Marcus training a new generation of veterans, showing them how to fight different battles. It was the photo on his desk. Angela in uniform, the Hartley twins on either side, and Jasmine in front. 4 generations of sacrifice and service bound by love and loss. "You still miss them?" Jasmine asked one evening as they closed up the foundation. "Every day," Marcus admitted. "But missing them means they mattered. And they did matter, baby girl. They all did." They walked out together into the evening light. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new fights, new chances to make a difference. But tonight, they were just a father and daughter carrying forward a legacy started by a young woman who chose to run toward danger to save strangers who would change the world. The ripples continued, spreading ever outward, touching lives in ways Angela Thompson could never have imagined when she made her last heroic choice. And somewhere, in whatever came after, 3 souls who'd given everything for others finally found peace. knowing their sacrifice had mattered in ways that would echo through generations. In a quiet corner of the foundation, a plaque bore simple words that said everything. For Angela Thompson, who saved lives. For Daniel and David Hartley, who honored hers. For all who serve, in uniform and out, make it matter. And they did. Every single day, they did. If this story touched your heart, reminded you of the sacrifices made by those who serve, and the ripples of kindness that can change the world, please subscribe for more powerful stories. Click on one of the 2 stories on your screen now for another incredible tale that will stay with you long after it ends. Until next time, remember that one act of courage, one moment of sacrifice, can echo through decades and transform countless lives. Make it matter.